Today we're going to be looking at some leaked documents that could align with a very interesting proposal of how the Democrats and the Republicans are doing a little bit of infighting, and break that all down for you because there's a lot of interesting things that were in this document. I think you guys are going to like. It's going to be an interesting one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. We'll get into it and start this. As you guys know, we've been doing videos and etc. About breaking down a lot of these hearings and a lot of not only statements, but also testimony, etc. It is getting interesting in terms of how and why we're seeing a lot of what we're seeing right now coming from DC. So there's got to be something else, is the way I look at this. Here's one of the first stories. House hearings reveal deepening party divide. And I think most people would probably understand that. If you've been watching our shows here for the last 2 weeks, you probably have caught many of our breakdowns and clip parades that we do around these party divide elements around where and if we're going to see regulation with crypto and around crypto. My question is going to be, is this just a lot of posturing? If you haven't checked those out, make sure and visit our YouTube channel. We did one on crypto regulation. This was the one where the two finance committees came together, the Agriculture Finance Committee and so on. And we did a full breakdown on that. So check that video out there. It's a good one. It kind of gives you a breakdown on it. But where all this is leading to is this tweet right here by Eleanor Terrett. Let me just kind of click out of this. This is a scoop prior to today's Financial Committee and House GOP hearing on digital asset This was a memo that was circulated among Democrat committee members. And in each one of these, there is like an agenda that these committee members are basically tasked with being able to do. And the problem is that most of these agenda items, it's as if they haven't been paying attention, is the weirdest thing. I want to jump to this first slide and we'll kind of break this down. While Republicans claim that they are working to provide clarity to the markets by carving out space for the CFTC and crypto, they're simultaneously undermining the hamstring of the agency by proposing cuts to its budgets. Republicans are providing that they really aren't serious about protecting investors and consumers. This is, again, the Dems' talking points in the memo of prepping their own people for the committee to go out and attack the Republicans based on these kind of scenarios. And I think what you will agree is what side of the house you're on, it doesn't really matter. This is should be a very bipartisan approach. And I think this is one of the challenges that we're going to continue to see facing crypto regulation and or some sort of guidance from DC if we see these kinds of fencing matches starting to develop. Further in this was SEC's Commissioner Hester Pierce criticizing the agency's resistance to Bitcoin spot ETP. Now, again, this is just showing agency turmoil. And here's number 2. Committee Republicans are trying to pass pro-crypto legislation in June. Well, newsflash, our nation is set to default on its debt. As early as June 1, Republicans' number 1 priority is to join Democrats in passing a clean debt ceiling to avoid economic catastrophe before it's too late. And if you look at what's happening right now is Biden and McCarthy are resuming their debt ceiling talks already. So this is not, and this is the thing that's kind of funny, is because you don't have to do all of this work linear. The idea behind Capitol Hill and lawmakers is they're working on all kinds of bills, all kinds of things at one time. Sure, the debt ceiling is number 1, but this was a scenario in which they still have to address other laws, other issues out there. So this is just, again, showing the pettiness between the two parties and how they're trying to say, hey, well, we should be dealing with the debt ceiling, not messing around with this crazy crypto stuff. Well, we should be dealing with a lot of things that are aligned with the American, financial sectors as a whole, but more importantly is the taxpayers as a whole and what this all could be in terms of legislation, enforcement, and crypto is a big part of that. So for them to say that, again, just the narrative seems to be off going forward. Republicans have decided to embark on a partisan pursuit of sweeping a digital asset legislation that erects entirely new legal framework for crypto industry, when neither the Biden administration, investors in the SEC, nor financial regulators have called Congress to do so. No real news story on that, because I think you guys will all agree everybody has been asking for this. The SEC is asking for it. The regulators are asking for it. The constituents are asking for it. pretty much the world is asking for. It's why you're seeing so much activity in the UK, around the EU with MiCA, what we've seen already in Asia. And a lot of our breakdowns of these financial hearings, if you go back and look at some of those videos, you'll see the flight of innovation is probably the biggest concern that I think a lot of people are really focusing in on right now, is the fact that we'll continue to see a lot more startups, a lot more innovation, all centering around the future of blockchain. So this is not something that it's brand new. This is something that everybody's been asking for quite some time. This is number 4. All right, so the problem isn't ambiguity, it's mass noncompliance. With existing laws, crypto companies can't be left off the hook. The U.S. has a regulatory system that has worked well, sustained massive innovation in the financial system for decades. We can't invent new accommodating regulatory structures simply because crypto companies refuse to follow the clear rules of the road. Only problem is that, again, these points are being put out as talking points to Democrats that make them look stupid. Because, I mean, let's go for it, guys. The reality is that there is not a set of rules that are out there. This was in from Meta Law. He did a full string on this. We had James on the show the other day. U.S. Chamber of Commerce hasn't just filed a brief in Coinbase's versus the SEC case, calling the SEC for unlawfully in the digital asset case space. This was a Chamber of Commerce, not the Chamber of Digital Commerce. This is a big deal. And he gets into a lot of it. But his whole point has been that there has been no venue. There's been no narrative that any of these companies can go and abide by because there hasn't been a regulatory framework that's in place for them to even abide by it. So it just gets back to the blindness, I think, that's happening in DC. Sometimes I feel like they're ahead of the game, and then sometimes I feel like some of these lawmakers are so petty that they're more concerned about making points than actually making change. So that is the problem that we're dealing with on an ongoing basis. And see what all right, so it's a turf war. If no one is fighting, both SEC and CFTC are aligned on both the fact the SEC is the regulator to determine the crypto assets are securities, and the SEC has made it clear that nearly all crypto assets are securities. End of story. That's kind of the thing that this is, again, another talking point by the Dems that are simply coming in there. And if you look at this clip right here, this came over from CNBC, listen to what Rostin Benham said about this.
For what the future looks like in terms of regulatory clarity for crypto?
Joe, first of all, thanks. It's great to be here. You know, there are gaps in the regulatory structure right now, and we need to fill those. The bottom line is we have a lot of retail participation. We have a lot of speculation. Volatility has come down a bit in the past couple months, especially since, what happened in the spring in the marketplace. But still, we have a growing, emerging economy, markets that are acting like the traditional markets we have. And from my perspective, we need to create a regulatory structure that doesn't have holes and gaps so that we're protecting people and we're embedding the principles that we have in
traditional finance. What's the CFTC doing? What's the SEC doing? It makes perfect sense, does it not? If you can decide what crypto assets are securities and which act like commodities, it should be fairly simple to split things up and delegate responsibility, like swaps, futures, options. Those are all your purview. Things that are based on securities could be the SEC's. Can't you guys get along? Can't you share?
We do get along.
Is that going to happen?
We can share. We have shared. We will share. But for us, the CFTC, the difficulty is, as you know, we're a derivatives regulator. We don't oversee cash markets. So the authority that I've been asking Congress for is cash authority, so that we can go into the Bitcoin cash market, the Ether cash market, and the other digital commodity tokens.
But Gary Gensler says that those are securities.
Those aren't securities?
Well, we're going to have to figure that out, I think, legislatively, because this is a new asset class, and there are different components and characteristics of this asset class as opposed to traditional asset classes.
All right, so I'll stop it there. I think he hit on it. The cash market is one of the biggest scenarios that plays out, which does cause the regulator rub between the two. And the fact that they're going into it, they recognize the problem. I'm surprised that we don't see that more and more. So again, another talking point leaked out of this memo that just isn't in fact true. So another problem as a whole. Let's go on to our next slide. This coming in also. Number 6. All right, so this is under Chair Gensler. The SEC has built up the strongest enforcement team yet to go after crypto criminals and protect investors from consumers from harm, just like they did with FTX. Unfortunately, the committee Republicans wanted to reverse course and tie the hands of the SEC. SEC must continue to lead the regulation of the U.S. crypto. All right, so based on that leaked item, again, it just goes back in to show you that both sides of the aisle, and I don't know which is worse, either they're uninformed or they're just stupid. That's I guess the bigger problem when you look at all these points, because they're all easily disproved. To prove my point on this last one is Hester Pierce. This is a clip from her breaking down what's happening inside the SEC. Again, this is all open, regular, easy access stuff. Where are they going with this in these committees? And why are they doing it? Is this all just posturing and grandstanding? I just don't understand how you can pass any kind of regulatory alignment if you're not well versed on what's actually happening within the regulators. Listen to her.
What more should the SEC be doing in terms of guidelines and clarity?
Well, one area where the chair and I think, don't see eye to eye is the lack of clarity around when something is or is not a security, and what actually is the security at issue when we're talking about these token offerings. So I do think that we could provide some more clarity in that space. I think we could provide more clarity around custody of digital assets by broker-dealers, investment advisors, and others in our space. And just more generally, we could provide clarity around how these traditional entities can interact with digital assets in a way that's compliant with the existing regulatory structure. And then, of course, we haven't provided clarity around exactly what it is that needs to be done to, create a fund, whether that's an exchange-traded fund or some other kind of exchange-traded product. I think the chair has started to provide some guidance on what he'd like to see in that way, but we have a lot more work to do to make it clear that we want to interact with people within our regulatory ambit who want to interact with digital assets.
All right, so I think that's pretty straightforward. It's coming right from the SEC commissioners that are in there working elbow to elbow with Gary Gensler, and they're already making these kind of statements. So it's very clear that the lawmakers should be able to assess how their governing bodies are, one, dealing with these kind of scenarios, and two, if there is some friction, they easily can identify this now, because it's been in open media for quite some time about what has been happening within the SEC. And I think this is the narrative that seems to be building on this anti-crypto army, trying to act as if the SEC has been protecting consumers when in fact they haven't been protecting, because there's no regulatory alignment. And we've had all these debacles occurring because it's pushed these companies into offshore positions, causing the FTX scenario, not them causing it, but the FTX scenario occurred because there wasn't enough regulation and oversight, obviously, which they had, which is why they're going in and going after Sam Bankman-Fried. This is a problem that I think we're going to continue to see in the aisles. And this is the situation, I think, that, again, gets back into it. Sometimes I get, hey, this is going to be a good thing. And then I feel like I get the idea that this is never going to happen. I'd love to get you guys' feedback. Do you feel like, is it the Republicans that are pushing this and that's kind of the narrative that we're dealing with? Or do you feel like there is enough bipartisan on the aisles to be able to push this through in the sense of getting some sort of regulation clarity in the future? Love to get your comments down below. Drop them down there. These kinds of leaked documents, I don't think, help anyone in really understanding how to protect innovation here in the United States, which is the biggest issue. All right, if you guys are not tuned in as part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in there. It's a free thing, and it's easy for you to do. Just drop the link or click the link down below. And of course, if you want to reach me, it's out there on Twitter, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.